And now we have the Tedesco brothers, and they're accompanied by Donna Lee Nardo, the co-writer on this book, Nightcrawler, which I've been reading eagerly, and I've been waiting a long time to read this book. Hi, guys.
Hi, Frederik. Hey, how you doing? Nice to meet you. Happy to be here.
I mean, from the States to Denmark, we got to build a bridge here, right?
Sure,
Because
absolutely.
it's looking a little bleak right now with Donald Trump and Mette Frederiksen, which is our head of
Yeah, it's
state.
a lot of fresh news. There's some, yeah, maybe some issues. Eh?
I think it'll get all sorted out, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Been allies for so long, for 80 years, I think. So yeah,
Mm.
but I've been really curious to talk to you guys because the first time I heard of you was actually Kevin Knuth, whom
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
yeah, I had on this show. And normally I would be here with Anja C. Andersen, but she's a little under the weather, and it's a little late here in Denmark. So she will listen to the interview afterwards, and then we will do some Danish parts, kind of breaking down what you guys are saying a
Right.
little bit.
Okay. So,
Yeah. But Kevin Knuth talked about you guys, and he didn't want to steal your thunder, but he was pretty impressed by the results you're getting. So I thought maybe you could start by explaining the listeners who you are and how you got in this situation.
sure. Do you want to lead it out, Gerald? Yeah. I mean, we took an interest in the UA. I mean, we had a lifelong interest in this subject matter, but we took more of a professional interest when there was a release of the ODNI report from Washington D.C. Talking about, it was June 21st, 2021. But they were sort of talking about the pilots, the naval pilots, seeing these objects with them 10 miles off the coast of the east coast of the United States. And this was happening across off of the coast of Virginia. It was happening off the coast of Jacksonville, Florida. And we there was also reports of naval pilots seeing them off the Pacific coast, near Catalina Island. So our thought was that this was probably happening along the entire coastal United States. And where we live on an island, Long Island, and it has a barrier island that sits out offshore, out in that area, and not far where the pilots were seeing these objects. So we figured that would be a perfect spot to observe these things. Long Island itself, where we live, also has a long history of UFO sightings. So we thought it would be a natural thing to start from that area and pick that as a test site. And I believe our friend Kevin Knuth was with the UAPX, and they had done some research over at Catalina Island on the West Coast. Yes. So he actually joined us out here several nights and observed what we were doing, and I think he got a little bit of an eyeful that night. Yeah, they were entertained. Yeah.
He told me about it, but he didn't want to go on the record because he wanted to leave all the good stuff to you guys. But yeah, off cam, he told me that that was quite an amazing experience.
Yes, and he picked one of the coldest nights to be out there too,
Of
without
course,
without a heavy jacket.
UFOs are
Uh,
known to make it difficult, right?
Yes.
Just like Gary Nolan, right? He came out from California in the late fall,
Yes.
but it was
Right.
very cold
Yes.
that night. He
Very
had
cold. That's right.
the brothers, Frederick had to give Gary a coat that they had stashed in the Nightcrawler because he was out there in a little polo shirt.
We
We are
we
the
also
shore, it's always so much colder, but this was a
uh,
cold night to boot.
we always get these guests that don't dress the part. They're not they're not ready for the
They
weather. They picked the coldest night to come out. Luckily, we have heat here, and we have the comforts at home in this mobile laboratory we call the Nightcrawler.
Sure.
Mhm.
Well, I'm a Dane, so if I ever is lucky enough to come along, I'll sure bring a huge jacket. That's for sure.
Sure,
Um,
Big
well,
Orca, we'd love to have you. That would be
yeah,
excellent.
sure,
I mean,
absolutely.
you say when, and I'll come. I think my kids will understand. So, um,
Yeah, absolutely. Join our guest list.
I would love to. That would be a great honor. But let me ask you guys. So the interest in UFOs, did that start with in 2017, and you guys, you mentioned Ryan Graves, a former guest on this show as well, or
Yes.
is this a lifelong interest for
This
you?
it was yeah, yeah, this I mean this has been for quite a number of years. I think it stemmed from I guess an incident where we had when we were kids. I believe we were probably 7 or 8 years old at the time.
Yeah, we were young. Yeah.
And we had an unusual visitor that night. Somebody that had stopped at the house, wore a fedora hat, and came in representing a company, what he called a Slug-a-Bug, which was an exterminating company. But he certainly didn't look like an exterminator. He kind of looked like the character from.
He looked like actually looked like the priest from the Exorcist movie. He was wearing all black and everything was black. The fedora hat was black.
Yeah, so picture that, we had invited him in. He was seemed like an interesting character, and the interesting thing about the visitation is that he spoke mainly about future events. He talked about authors like Edgar Cayce. He had carried a briefcase, and his briefcase had nothing more than these books in it, so a little unusual for an exterminator to be carrying this stuff. And he had certainly gotten our attention that night. And I talked a lot about the UFOs, the vernacular, I guess, and now they call them UAPs. But he kind of an interesting, like I said, an interesting character, and we were fascinated by what he presented that night. The odd thing about it is that none of us could remember his face. It was kind of like in a fog. We remember, of course, we remember the suit that he was wearing, the fedora hat. But we could not remember, any attributes, anything specific about this character. So, we jokingly referred to him as the Men in Black, or the Man in Black, that paid us a visit.
Well, the fedora hat would be a nice touch, and a new wrinkle to the Men in Black.
Yes. So, so I think that's where when things pretty much started. This interest in this phenomena. And we had stuck with it for a number of years.
Yeah. So normally, it's an experience, or in my case, it's my dad who really was into UFOs, had a UFO club back in the 60s here in Denmark, where the topic was very, very popular as well. Mm-hmm. And also, had American friends actually who spoke about the topic, but he didn't have a fedora hat, my dad. I'm sure it wasn't him. But okay, so and maybe explain to our listeners, because they haven't read your book, I assume, but hopefully they will, and I can recommend it. But how did the whole Nightcrawler project get started? What is the Nightcrawler?
Okay, it started with us. It started. It was actually before the release of this report, and before 2017. We talked about going out. We were both engineers, so we both worked at a safety testing laboratory, Underwriters Laboratories, and we wanted to develop a mobile unit that we could take. We want to take surveys of Wi-Fi communications, wireless communications. We wanted to look for there was cases of cancer clusters in certain areas, and we wanted to see if there was a relationship between that.
Right, and at the time we were interested in surveying the island from one end to the other, and we needed a mobile platform to do that. So what we did is we retrofitted this C-class mobile home and this RV with the latest electronics to cover various different radio spectrums. And we wanted to measure the electromagnetic emissions coming off of cell phone towers and the transformers and any kind of communication that produced something that I guess the Europeans refer to it as electrosmog. And so we were very conscious about that. And with some of the reports of cancer clusters that occurred in different areas of the island, we wanted to do these surveys and see exactly whether there was some correlation between the cancer cluster and the electronic emissions, the radio emissions, the EMI emissions. So that's pretty much where we started. But the platform was mainly set up and ready to go, for further research. I just want to back up a little bit. We actually had two versions of this mobile laboratory that we call Nightcrawler. There was a Nightcrawler 1 and a Nightcrawler 2. The Nightcrawler 1 we actually built from scratch. It took us about a year. It took us a year to build. We designed it. It was a bottom-up design. And we were also interested in doing exotic weather phenomena, like ball lightning, dark lightning, some of the more exotic electrical phenomena associated with weather. And we wanted to build a mobile system that would have a Faraday cage. It was a metal mesh within the walls, so it would protect the equipment inside against electromagnetic emissions. It would also possibility if we had to go into a storm area, because if we were going to observe and collect data on electrical phenomena, we wanted to build it sturdy enough that would resist a storm. So it was almost like what you would see storm chasers use. This thing was like, it was a tank, actually. Yeah, and it was
they,
a big
they
gray,
ruggedized every inch of this mobile laboratory, ruggedized it, right?
I mean,
yeah,
it looks amazing, and for the listeners, it's the big truck. I think you call it an RV.
Yes, C-class mobile home. Yep.
Yeah.
And that was the second incarnation was the C-class mobile home. That was when we retrofitted and modified the design.
Yeah,
right. And it's over a period of time, and we've added so much equipment in it that you see behind us. There's the equipment on the wall here. There's
you're inside of it right now.
Yes.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah, so it's we're kind of crowded out with all the instrumentation,
It's a little bit post-apocalyptic. It's when everything goes away, you guys are still hunting UFOs. Yeah.
both versions were very interesting looking. Yeah, it got a lot of attention on the road. Definitely got a little character.
Definitely, I would imagine a bit attention-grabbing vehicle.
Oh yeah. That's what definitely turns an eye or two.
But I guess I assume because I think it's quite brilliant to do it in a vehicle instead of moving equipment, putting it in and out of different. Is the practical element to it why you did it this way?
Yes, and that's exactly why I did it this way. We wanted to be able to move our equipment from one location to another without having a fixed location where where would be a problem to relocate that equipment. And especially if we were going to study whether it was exotic weather phenomena, or electrical phenomena, weather, or was surveys for electrosmog. We also took an issue, of course, with the UFO topic when these reports came out. We had all the equipment in here that it could easily be used to observe, anomalous phenomena in the air or even off the coast on the sea. So basically, became the main focus of the mobile laboratory, right? And it caught the interest of Harvard University's Avi Loeb.
Yeah.
The astrophysicist there running the Galileo project. So we were with them for a period of time. We were part of the we're actually affiliates for the research team, and we help support and get their platform from a beginning structure into an point where it started to take shape on the roof, and I think at one point they had to move it from the roof to to an area that was I guess near the university. And
Frederik, the Tedesco brothers' first scientific paper that was published was as co-authors with other authors from the Galileo project as they were helping them, guiding them, advising them, putting together their sensors and their instrumentation. Isn't that correct? That first paper was on instrumentation, and you guided them.
And Avi Loeb, a former guest on the show as well, a fantastic human being, great perspective. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and then you did this whole, which really is, the main focus of the book is the whole 10-month field study, I would call it.
Yes.
I think you call it as well, where you actually try and go and look for these UFOs that everyone is talking about. And how did you go about, and what did you find?
So the when the book was written, it was at that point it was a 10-month study that we had completed, and the book was basically it started out as it was supposed to be a research paper. It turned into a monograph, and that monograph became part of the book, where we included an introduction to talk about, of course, ourselves and what we were doing at the time, why we were motivated to take on this research. But that did included the 10 months of research that was out there. We called it phase one of the research, and it was basically to see whether or not there was anomalous phenomena that existed off of a coastal area. And in our case, it was Long Island at Robert Moses State Park. So we began to study. We weren't quite sure exactly what we were looking for, other than some of the observations that were made that focusing orbs of light and incursions over the land and off the coast. And these lights would be various different colors. It'd be orange, blue or white. And so we had basically set up shop out there, and we realized right away initially that there were occasions where we were observing this phenomena, but it was very difficult to see. It was they had the low albedo, the really low luminous intensities, and at times you couldn't see them at all. And it wasn't until we had changed our hyperspectral equipment, our camera equipment, to include the extended bands of the electromagnetic spectrum. So, we went with cameras that had near infrared, and then graduated to shortwave infrared, and then, of course, long wave, which is the FLIR, the thermal systems. And we began to see a whole lot more. It kind of opened up a window. And in the near infrared and shortwave infrared, we started to see these objects were very pronounced, and they presented as orbs at times when they had a higher luminous intensity, and when they didn't, what we would see in the infrared cameras is something that looked like a polyhedron within a sphere of some sort.
Yeah.
And whether it was produced by some kind of electromagnetic field around it, or some kind of a container of some sort. But we had followed this for 10 months. We had quite a few sightings. We had documented it. We documented a video, and we have instrumented data on it. And we had, at that point, we had decided, we were going to write a book. But I think we had an incident back in August 28th, was it? 28th, 2022? Yeah. Yeah. So, early on, we had started the research in July of 2022, and July, I believe, was early July. And in August, we had set up at Robert Moses State Park. We were literally about 110 or 115 meters from the water's edge. There's a beach area. We take down where there's a path that we can visualize everything that's going on over the water. So we had these cameras. The RV has these night vision cameras, hyperspectral cameras, and we noticed as we were setting up that there was something on the central monitor. It looked like a triangular pattern of lights, and pretty fairly intense, very very stationary, very stable. And that night we had 35-mile-an-hour wind gusts. So Gerald and I decided to venture down to the water's edge with just on night vision cameras, and not thinking that we should have, probably in retrospect, we should have brought the monitors, the survey meters, and that sort of thing, the Geiger counters. But we had taken our two cameras down there. One was a Lunar Optics. The other one was a Cyanex Black, which was a image intensifier, night vision type camera. And we realized that these objects out there were very bright in the infrared, but non-visible. There was no visible light, that you could see with your eyes.
How was the
And
weather? What was it, cloudy or?
it was a clear night.
Okay.
It was clear, but it was quite windy. The gusts of wind were pretty strong.
Yeah.
And kicked up the surf quite a bit. And we noticed that these objects, they were very stable, even in the 50-mile-an-hour wind gusts. We have an app called Stellarium, and we're looking at the star constellations and so forth, and saying, trying to differentiate between something that might be a set of stars, a constellation, rather than something else. And we quickly ruled out that it wasn't a constellation. That these objects were unusual because they seemed to have rotation to them. And they were glinting. They had a kaleidoscope appearance around them, and we decided to use the image laser, the rangefinder laser within the lunar optics camera, and we started to emit light, infrared light, back and forth, sweeping back and forth over these objects, and we realized that they had reflected this IR energy back. So there's definitely something out there. It was a mass. It was a tangible mass. It was relatively close. It was the beam itself. I think the range is close to about 14 or 1500 meters, and we were able to get a definite reflection or refraction from these objects. So we did this roughly about six or seven times. I think on the seventh time of running this emitter back and forth, I noticed there was an unusual light in front of this triangle, and it looked like another object that had come down from the upper atmosphere and moved, translated to the left of the field of view in front of the camera. And we're looking at it. It looked like a rectangular source of light. It was quite luminous in the beam of the rangefinder, and very quickly, within 3 seconds, that beam of light suddenly moved toward the shore, and the rangefinder flashes every second. So every time that flashed, I saw this rectangular source of light get so much larger, and I knew at that point that this thing is moving, or it seemed to move toward the shore.
Towards John and Gerry.
Yeah,
yes.
where you are located. Yeah.
Yes, you're right. And
was it scary?
It was scary, startling. It was startling because this thing approached very quickly. It approached the shoreline probably within 2 or 3 seconds. Yeah, at the third second point where the rangefinder flashed the third time, it was literally on top of us, and all we saw was this intense infrared light. And this was picked up on both cameras. John had a high resolution on his camera. I had an IR camera too. Mine was picking up a lot of electromagnetic noise. John had a metal enclosure, so it acted more as a Faraday cage. My camera's picking up more of the noise, but I was still seeing the objects out there. But I didn't see John was recording this object approaching. My camera picked it up as it was just on shore. Right. And then that was the one of the unusual attributes about this observation is that we had banding, we had noise within the camera, video noise, and which was accompanied by audio noise as well, which was highly unusual. And it was picked up more so on Gerald's camera. That was more. It was a plastic enclosure. Mine was metal, and which I believe had shielded some of that, whether it was RF energy or it was something else. But as this light source made its way toward the shore, it was very intense. It overloaded the cameras. I had taken my binocular and pulled it away from my eyes just to see if I could see this light that was intense within the camera, and I saw nothing at all. There was no visible light, And at that point, I basically yelled out to my brother. I said, let's get away from the shore. I have no idea what this is. And,
They actually thought it could be a weapon of some kind, right? Approaching you from the water.
And that,
very
exactly.
scary.
And that, it was threatening. And it was, at that point, I just turned to my left to move away from the shore, and I collapsed onto the sand. I lost the function of my legs. I couldn't coordinate them. I couldn't get my legs under me to pick myself back up. And Gerald at that time asked, what's wrong? And I said, I can't move. I can't, get myself back up on my feet. And at that point he had reached out to try to pull me up, and he collapsed on the sand. And there seemed to be some kind of a flaccid paralysis.
Yeah, I mean, I had the same thing. It was a loss of muscle tone, no coordination it was leg muscles, everything below the hip, the lower extremities, and it lasted it was almost like a flaccid paralysis. So it lasted about 45 seconds.
Yes, it was,
and at the same time that was going on, there was we didn't know it then, but when we had taken the camera back to view the footage, John's camera was working intermittently, so was mine. I had picked up a wave of light that engulfed us as I turned the camera out towards the water. John's camera was picking up these weird optical effects inside. The streamers looked like spaghetti streamers of light. There was one part that looked like something scanning an array of light back and forth, and it was an orb of light inside the camera, and the light had looked like it got beyond the iris of the camera. It was in the optics. And John can explain that a little bit.
Yeah, what's unusual about it is, I before I was an engineer, I used to repair cameras. I was a service technician for digital cameras, and normally when whether it's infrared or it's visible light, you have an iris motor in there, a diaphragm that closes down to minimize the amount of light that would impinge on the image sensor. In this case, that didn't happen. The intensity of the light was extremely bright, to a point where there was some distortions on the image sensor. Now, I don't know whether or not there was a failure of that system at that point in time, because the camera was doing some other odd things as well, or there was the possibility of a source of energy or light getting beyond the iris motor and getting up close and personal to the image sensor. What we did find out is that the camera, some of the EEPROM settings, the macro settings were actually altered. They were corrupted. And normally I see that when I was doing service, I would see that after an electrical storm, where you have these high transients of energy, from an electrical discharge or lightning, that sort of thing. And in close proximity, they could literally reset or wipe out the memory settings. And that's what happened with this camera. I actually had to go back in there and reinitialize some of these macros. So we felt that was interesting. So it was obviously some kind of an electromagnetic field of some sort, that surrounded us.
And what about the sound? You mentioned some kind of sound.
Yes. So as we walked closer and closer to the shore initially, Gerald's camera with the Cyanix Black was picking up graininess. They call it color confetti, where you see this noise. It's like years ago when I'm dating myself now, where when the radio stations went off the air, they would transition without a signal, and you'd see the snow, that we call it, snow or noise, white noise, or something along those lines. But that's what we were seeing in his camera, was this color confetti of noise. But it also impacted the audio circuits as well, where you'd hear this noise level increasing as we got closer and closer to the shore. So that was an oddity that night, and we're not quite sure where that came from. That's what I was saying before, that I wish in retrospect that we had taken the other equipment, the Geiger counter, the RF field meter, and so forth, to
to get some kind of a basically to qualify what we were seeing and hearing.
And the other thing you can associate with is this phenomenon that was offshore. These three orbs of light. The other thing I want to backtrack on John's camera is besides seeing all the light effects that were happening inside the optics of the camera, there was clicking noises going on. You could, and if you can actually hear all the clicking noises, and it was some kind of manipulation of the parts of the camera.
Right. So we kind of wondered whether or not, it was giving it a lot of thought, whether or not it was some kind of a threat assessment of some sort.
The interesting thing is the amount of time that we were partially paralyzed on the beach is the amount of time that these optical effects and something surveying John's camera took place. It was that extent, within 45 seconds. When that stopped, of course, we regained function of our legs, and we headed back to the RV. We believe we were followed by something. When we moved the cameras home, we did see an orb of light that would appear and disappear and then move off the field of view, and we were trying to follow with the cameras. When we got back to the RV, Donna had taken her IR camera out, and hers completely failed.
Right.
So it looked like
it didn't turn on at all. It wasn't even the batteries. It was not operative. And the interesting thing is, it wasn't operative for a while. That the rest of that day, that weekend, a few weeks later, I took it out to investigate, and it still wasn't working right. But then it's working okay now. It is working okay now. It's like normal. I never used it again. I used a better camera that John had suggested, but that was an anomaly, something very strange that happened.
So you're experiencing all of this high strangeness, as you call it in the book, as I think J. Allen Hynek used that expression, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So first you see something, you don't see it with your own eyes, but you see through the equipment, and then you kind of feel like it has a lasting effect.
Yes. So we actually had a physical effect from it that lasted, I would say, probably over a period of about 24 hours. I had what I believe was my lymph nodes under my arms that were inflamed, and I remember having bouts of fatigue, but unusual the next day. It's like, and that I think over a period of 48 hours, it kind of just went away. It wasn't a lasting effect.
I had the same symptoms. I had fatigue, but I had tender lymph nodes in my neck, not under my armpits, and it was the same amount of time, span of time that lasted.
Right.
Something that the brothers say is that they felt a level of violation after this.
Yes. It was. I mean, yeah, that was interesting, because the thoughts that I had that night was, or actually the next day was a feeling of that we were somehow we were violated in some way. I can't really express it any other way. It was, it was difficult to wrap your head around it. The experience itself. It was just a really odd experience.
Yeah.
I remember John made a comment that night we went home. He says, he kept talking about if something entering his head, or did something scan his brain. He just some thoughts he brought up about that night. It was just a feeling of disbelief and just being watched.
That's scary. I think this would be a good movie one day, a fictional movie. I would love to see that. That beach scene would be incredible.
Right.
You two laying there with no functioning legs, and it's just
if you look at the videos, amazing. It looks like something out of what's that movie?
Oh yeah, the Witch movie.
The Blair Witch Project.
Yeah.
You hear all the sounds. You hear John and Gerry. They can't move. You hear the click, 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 and the whirring of the cat. It's odd. And then the running, the rustling of sand. It is an experience. Amazing. And something I want to add. It's an experience that they both had where there's no resolution. So I can't imagine that you both, even today, can really explain fully what happened, because you don't know why it happened, how exactly it happened. It's still very much a question mark. So how could you deal with that and, put it into context and feel comfortable about it when you're really still striving to find out what the heck happened during that experience? It's something that you probably have for a long, long, long time, not knowing, did it scan your brain? Did it, violate you in some way? It certainly did by incapacitating both of you.
Yeah. And it's interesting Donna brought that up because we have been trying to pursue the bioeffects that we were experiencing. We have talked to a team of neuroscientists from UAP Med, another group in America, and also we had just started talking with an emergency room physician who takes an interest in bioeffects of close encounter cases, and so we started these conversations with this emergency room physician, and we're trying to see where that goes.
Interesting.
There was also a second set of bioeffects on the beach, which we began talking about, and it's in our book. Is we went back to the RV. We got the other two members, Donna and Sue. Yeah, I should say we have. Yeah, two, and we had gone back down to the beach. Once we had talked about our experience, the four of us had gone back down. Donna and Sue brought their own night vision cameras, and what we experienced down there was this triangular shape was of lights, of orbs, was still out there, and it was out there for exactly 45 minutes. It did not move in any way, shape, or form.
And luckily,
it was very windy.
you have it on tape. Or
yes. And we actually, on the central monitor, we actually had used a dry erase marker, and we marked those locations. They didn't move; they stayed there.
Mm-hmm.
So again, if it was something that was prosaic, if it was a boat or something, we would have seen the movement. If it was a star constellation, we would have seen that as well. We looked into everything. We looked at even possible mirages,
Right, sure.
mirage effects, and everything was. We ruled out all the prosaics. There was nothing there.
Right
And
now,
I just want to tell the listeners real quick that you really are really thorough in your book, and you do take precautions and kind of also look at all the, what do you call it, all the errors that could arise when this kind of study. Yeah.
That's something.
Planning by the brothers. Very good planning. Gerry, do you want to say what shape the three large points of light were? They were triangle, but it was a certain type of triangle.
Yeah, they were in the shape of a scalene triangle. The two lights were a little offset, one on an angle, and then you had the one light off to the side. At first, we thought it was one solid object, but now we know it was three separate but fixed objects. They were, like John was saying, they were there for 45 minutes. We all observed them. Donna and Sue, the other researchers observed them through their cameras. Of course, none of us could see it visually,
right?
Other than the IR cameras, and they were very bright in the IR cameras. They were pretty good. They were also a nice size. They weren't a point of light. They were large.
Right. They were large orbs to me.
Yeah.
3 large orbs.
Exactly. And the other thing, as we continue to observe these things, there are other orbs that appeared and moved around these three, this formation, this triangular formation. At one point, one orb moved from the right field of view to the left field of view of our cameras. It was moving east to west, and the object seemed to stutter as it was moving laterally across along the shore, near the shoreline. At one point it looked like it approached closer to us and then backed off. Finally disappeared. These other orbs appeared. They disappeared. At around the 45-minute mark, Donna had noticed an orb falling straight down and I think moving to the left. Donna, you were saying?
Yes, to the left field. Yes.
Yeah.
Which was going left, which was going east.
Yeah, that's when it moved across the field of view and it disappeared.
Yeah, I want to say that those were more like satellite objects. They weren't. The triangle was separate.
Yeah, these were satellite.
Yes.
We call them satellite. A bit smaller, and you know, if you extended a quarter, but an arm's length away from your face, they were roughly that size. You know,
and again,
But
not with the naked eye. You could not
yeah,
see this with the naked eye.
right. Nothing in visible light. Although there were the times when John was shining the IR emitter and a torch at it. They would occasionally reflect the light back. Yeah. So what we did do is I had brought back down with me a 90,000 lumen visible light torch, white light, and I started painting the objects with this torch back and forth. And once I did that, we could all see the reflection of these objects with the torch. Again, you know, that would be within that 1,300-meter distance, you know, that the length of, you know, the beam length of the torch. But as we, you know, as I was painting it, you could see that the refraction of light coming back off these objects. So we knew that there was something out there that had mass, it was solid, you know, some kind of a semi-solid state. And we realized that this object, they had rotation to them. You know, they weren't stationary. And
how do you see that? How just for
so the object itself seemed to have a luminous side, and I don't know whether it was just one side or maybe two sides, but at least one side that was luminous, and it had a rectangular appearance to it. That source of reflection. I want to comment how we arrived at it. We were doing a video analysis of those objects. We reviewed the video. We slowed the frame rate down, and we took a you know a frame by frame view of it. Yeah, and we could clearly see this rotation. The rotation was random. So if you hit it with the light, you'd see this rectangular reflection coming back. You know, it might be on an upswing of the rotation, downswing, or to right to left. But you can definitely see that there was at least one luminous side. The rest of the object appeared to be dark. There was almost like a black body source or a black body locus. You know. It was absorbing. It seemed to be absorbing light, except for this reflective side to it. This one reflective side. I don't believe we would have been able to clearly see it without that reflective side there. Although when we hit the beam of light around this reflective source, we noticed that there was something else that appeared to be in the shape of a sphere, about 4 times the diameter of the reflected light source, almost as though there was either a translucent skin around it or an electric, some kind of a field around it. But you can clearly see that, and you could see that, you know, there was some distortions of our light as it was reflecting off of this object. You know, and I think that's part of the reason why so many folks that have, you know, the cell phone cameras and so forth, they try to take images of these things, these pictures, and they come up distorted, out of focus, and unclear, because there's something else going on there, you know. And that was one of the challenges.
How many times did you see something that you would consider anomalous?
We were seeing them on a somewhat regular basis down there. But we had put the time in. We were down there. We're staying overnight. You know, hour after hour, we'd be there. What was it, 8 to 10 hours?
It was a 12-hour shift.
Yeah. So
every weekend, save
every
some
weekend.
Holidays, but then we'd go on a Friday if there was a weekend holiday, and whether it was you know, an ice age night or a rainy night, or whether it was one night it was so hot that the instruments that we did have portable outside was sweating into the morning hours. It was so humid.
Lots of humidity.
We did it in all extremes.
It was a 4-season expedition.
Exactly.
I mean, the temperatures would get pretty cold down there, and we'd be down there, you know, covering what we could. There were nights that, you know, it was quite prevalent, you know, what we were seeing. Other nights that not so much, you know, scarce. But we spent a fair amount of time, and it's in the book, of course, too, is that we wanted to rule out the prosaics, where the park itself is about 30 to 35 miles from a major airport, JFK Airport. And we wanted to know the basic the traffic patterns that were, the arrivals and the departure flights, going in and out of the airport. So we ruled that out pretty quickly, especially with the equipment that we have. We could see this stuff from a distance of, as much as 15 miles, with our hyperspectral cameras, the hyper zoom cameras that we have, super zoom cameras, that we can actually see the fuselage of this commercial traffic, especially with the thermal camera, the long wave. We could clearly see that it was an airliner, it was a small plane or something like that. We also had the use of our radar system, which is marine-based radar, scanning in two different geometries. One is the horizontal scan, doing 360-degree scans. And the other was a vertical scan, is at 165 degrees worth of view, sky view. And that would scan upward in the atmosphere, almost 80,000 feet. And I should say we're the only research team in the United States using an active radar system. Right.
And we have a special experimental license for it from the
FCC.
Even the area that we chose, we checked with the Parks Department, and we got a research permit, so we could have full access to this barrier island, and we could control it, limit the population that would be there, which after 7 o'clock it dies out. People are restricted from entering. The only ones that are left there are fishermen who are there to maybe 11 o'clock.
Yeah,
12 maybe the latest, and sky watchers who use about 12 o'clock, and we're there alone with the full access to the area.
So safe to say that you have multiple sensors, which is always the main thing, right? You have
yes.
And we layer with multiple sensors, radar, hyperspectral cameras, everything from UV to the different ranges of IR, near IR, shortwave IR, long wave IR, which is FLIR, thermal imaging,
UVC, UVB, UVA. So we're covering the full range of the electromagnetic
Geiger counters. We have
alpha, beta, gamma. We're also looking at
spectrometers.
We have multiple spectrometers out there. So we're looking at, and these are broadband spectrometers. We're looking at the lights, the electromagnetic light spectra, the visible light spectra, but we're also looking at the IR and the UV as well. So this covers a real wide range. I mean, the visible light is between 400 and roughly about 700 nanometers. And our spectrometers will go down to 194 nanometer, which is UVC, which is the deep side of the UVC, and go on up to 1100 nanometers, which is slides within the low end of the shortwave infrared. So we're covering a wide spectrum of energy there.
The other thing is we're using spectrum analyzers. So we're monitoring RF,
radio frequency,
yeah.
ultrasonic sounds, ultrasonic, acoustic sound,
and we have listening sound. We also have acoustic listening devices with parabolic dishes, so they're directional, and of course we can amplify the sound to see if if it's, let's say, if we're looking for a prosaic answer. An aircraft, we can hear the sound of the engines, whether it's a turbofan or it's a prop driven. We'll be able to identify that along with the radar and the spectrum, the spectral analyzers,
and of course the magnetometers, which is I guess is part of any researcher's kit.
So Frederik, as you can tell from your reading of the book and what these gentlemen have been saying, they really did think of everything. They did add more equipment as time went on, but they basically had everything pre-planned in advance. A very good strategic job. And so we hosted a lot of different scientists and other guests, and sometimes John and Gerry would host others, and I was not there. And I don't think that one person ever really had a significant contribution as far as, well, you didn't do this, or, well, you need to add that. They really did think of everything. That's just their way. They're very detail oriented in that way.
And Donna was out there when we actually had
fighter pilot Ryan Graves out there with
yes,
a team of experts from the American Institute of Avionics and Aeronautics.
Yes.
Right. And, you know, and we frequently had visitors out there. We were an open book, you know, 100% transparent as far as what we were doing with our research. So we invited many different professionals, you know, academia, engineering people,
different
scientists, you know, and you know, and this is all part of, you know, the sharing of our ideas and resources. And
yeah, we want to be transparent. And we've hit, you know, like we said, we had Kevin Knuth out there. We had Dr. Laura Demeen, physicist. We had Dr. Wes Waters out there.
Maya.
We had anthropologist Maya Cohen out there. We had a science journalist out there who was doing a story on us.
Who was that?
That was Matthew Phelan.
Okay,
and his background
Daily
is
Mail.
chemistry.
Daily Mail, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
You should invite Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick one day.
Oh yes, he would love to host him.
We invite anybody.
Yeah,
even a debunker like Mick West.
Yeah, that would be interesting. He always find a reason to not believe anything.
I mean, we talk to skeptics. We've had a long conversation with Dr. Michael Shermer, who was also associated with the Galileo Project for a little while. But we had actually a Zoom meeting with him, and we talked about, you know, what we were seeing out there, and we were trying to get his thoughts as a skeptic.
Right, and he didn't formally debunk it in any way, any appreciable way.
Right? Yeah, so he couldn't find a good reason.
Right. We should get Mick West out there, though, really, where he could be in the field and see. Imagine what he might learn.
Right.
Would be amazing.
It could be a come to Jesus moment for him.
But I gotta hear, I gotta hear the three of you, because we had all this rumblings about all this drone activity.
Yes.
And you're such a capacity. You have the ultimate equipment, really. Did anyone ever contact you about trying to figure these things out, or did you go out yourself to see if you could see anything?
We actually went out ourselves. We had there was other researchers that we network with, and there was some researchers out in New Jersey that were talking about what they were seeing out there. We also were in contact with law enforcement. We also federal agency. We also, but by late December to early January, John and I went out with the Nightcrawler to see if we can make some observations of these objects, and we did observe them. They're there. They're large. Some of them look drone-like. They have the appearance of navigation lights on them. They aren't they're difficult to track on radar. They're intermittent on radar. We could easily track aircraft. These things would be intermittent. The other things, they would loiter for long periods of time. We watched one that loitered they actually went stationary, hovered for about an hour, and then finally moved about 100 miles per hour out, out of our field of view.
That's pretty unusual in and of itself, right?
Yeah, that's quite unusual.
Yeah,
and these would be out there for long periods of time, because the loitering time was up an hour, maybe a couple of hours, which is well beyond what you'd see in a commercial. Yeah, there seems to be a period of time when they were most active, and that was, and just to clarify it too, it wasn't just drone. We don't want to call them drone. We want to call them drone-like objects, because we simply don't know what they are. They seem to be accompanied by these orbs. And the orbs are very difficult to see without night vision camera systems or goggles or something like that. Their intensities are very low luminous objects in the infrared some of the time, and if somebody was out there and they saw a drone, I would suspect that if they had night vision cameras, they would see these orbs as well. That seem to be accompanying these drones. And I just want to take a step back. We started seeing the drone-like objects back in November of 2022. which was interesting because up to that period of time we were observing nothing but orbs, these orbs of light, and over a 3-week period, we had what appeared to be a large inventory of drone-like objects traversing the water back and forth off the coast.
It actually looked like a swarm.
It looked like a swarm.
Yeah.
It almost like a surveillance pattern. And we didn't know what to make of it at that time because we were observing one type of object, and now we saw these other objects, and these drone-like objects, seem to be surveilling the orbs. Because, and the reason why I say that is because the lighting patterns from these drones or drone-like, they whether they were headlights or some kind of
they look like searchlights,
and they would shine these search beams out laterally. They not towards the ground, which you would expect to look for something. It was laterally upward. And where they would shine these lights, there would be these orb-like objects. And occasionally the light would hit the orb-like object and it would reflect that light and you'd see it clearly. But most of the time when the light passed, the only way to visualize the orbs was through infrared cameras. Right. So
but they would keep their distance from these drone-like objects, and it looked like these drone-like objects would crisscross along the shoreline at different elevations, like doing these grid patterns.
Yeah, we'd see the orbs. The orbs seem to be just below the drones and these drone-like, and that's when they would become visible. When the lights from these drone objects was on the orbs themselves, and you can visualize it. But they seem to be in a grid-like pattern.
Yeah.
Back and forth over the water. You'd see them going out and coming back in almost like a search routine.
And I'd say the three of us were out. It was John, myself, and Donna. And we watched this activity for Johnson November. It was actually 1 week in October. So it was 1 week in October and about maybe 2 weeks in November 2022.
Right. And then it suddenly ended, after a 3-week period. And so we were just seeing the orbs again, just these orb-like objects. And I want to say that.
Just to back up for a second, the three of us had been in contact with other agencies, the Park, Homeland Security. What are we seeing in the sky? We're seeing something. The local police there at the park, New York State Homeland Security, a lot of different agencies, the Coast Guard, corporations who were working, not in the direct area, but nearby. So we were investigating, is anyone else seeing any of this? And no one was, including the Coast Guard. And to John and Gerry's point before, the structures that we saw, if it was the Coast Guard, their searchlights go on the water. They don't care what happens in the sky. And so they told us that much. But no one was taking claim to anything that we were seeing. And isn't that interesting?
It is.
And I have to credit Donna with that. She was our investigator. She did a very thorough job on it, and she did a deep dive into looking into possibility of drones.
Right.
She checked with every imaginable agency out there.
Yeah, and
it
nobody
was paramount that we find out what could be going on in the sky. But we knew from the start, when John and Gerry chose this primary location, Robert Moses State Park, we already knew that drones were banned. At that time, they were banned.
Right.
Are not allowed on the island. So, and then we went on to see these strange drone-like objects.
Yeah, and as I told you off before we started, we had an incident here as well, and we may have had several actually, but we had one that garnered a lot of attention, and in this city called Køge. It's also a city where there is some military activity that could be part of the explanation, of course, but I was contacted by the police and they had no idea what was going on, that's for sure. So could it be Russian surveillance? Could it be something like that? Maybe, but we did see the same characteristics. We saw drones in the air for far too long. We saw them disappear over the water. And yeah, a lot of the same characteristics as what were reported from New Jersey. Really weird.
Did they appear in clusters where you were?
Yeah, there were more. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's similar. They would we had reports of them coming in over the water. We actually had a sheriff's deputy from New Jersey Sheriff's Department. It was Orange County Sheriff's Department. One of the sheriff's deputies saw about 50 of these objects come in from the sea onto the shoreline, and the Orange County sheriff had actually called the Coast Guard, and the Coast Guard reported 13 of these objects actually following them as they were out there.
Yeah, back into shore.
And this is the Atlantic Ocean, the same large body of water where the Nightcrawler study actually took place for the most part.
Yeah, we're roughly within a 55-mile radius of the New Jersey shore. I also want to say too is that the drone-like objects seem to have a time frame when they were being observed. They would come out just after twilight, and you'd see these objects, up until about maybe 11, 12 o'clock at night. Then that would be it. We wouldn't see the drone-like objects. We just see the orbs, and the orbs would be out there all night long. We'd see them until the early morning hours when the sun was coming up. But very difficult to see them during the daytime because we realize that they are running dark. There is some kind of a surface on these objects that seems to be absorbing light. Unless they're producing light, you don't see them. We noticed this, as the sun was rising, you could see the reflective characteristics of these objects. They would be darker than everything else, even the cloud layers.
And I should say, Donna was out there when we saw that daylight orb. That was very difficult to see. The only way we noticed it was in motion. And this is one of the objects. And John and I actually did a video analysis on it. And what we did is we inverted the image so it would look like a negative. And then you could see that this object was quite pronounced. It was an orb.
This was just right at sunrise, right? It was right
at sunrise.
Yeah.
So when you say that they seem to stay all night, was that different orbs, or because you said also they were around 45 minutes?
That's how we're characterizing it. It's the drones, they seem to run between the hours of 6 at night, and 11, 12 o'clock, after 12 that morning, just after 12. That would be it. The orbs themselves, would be out there most of the time late at night. The early morning hours is when we could see them
easily. 1, 2, 3 in the morning.
The same orbs or different orbs?
Different orbs. These actually they would appear and disappear. They would suddenly be there.
I don't want to call the drones orbs because I know some people they're using them interchangeably at times, and I don't know if that's the case because the drones seem to have a lighting pattern.
And they're mostly they are visible. The drones
are mostly visible until there are times they seem to go.
But they go dark. They've been talked about going dark, and that's been reported by the sheriff's departments who actually launched their own industrial drones to get close to them, or if they went up with a helicopter, state police in New Jersey.
And then we would see this again, that the same pattern we'd see in November of 23. Where these objects, but
would appear
not as prevalent as they were in 22, but they were out there. And then that would also disappear after several weeks worth of observations. And then we just didn't know what to do with the report. It's like we're trying to describe the two different objects. They look like drones to us. But we couldn't get any clarification from any of the agencies to take responsibility for it. So, we talked a little bit about it in the book, but we didn't go into too much detail. And it wasn't until these drones were being seen all over New Jersey and of course Long Island, New York City, and Connecticut that we said, wait a minute, it's the same time period again. It seemed like they came out in November of 2024 and just intensified.
Yeah, I think they came out November 8th.
November 8th. Okay, so the time frame
would be the same time frame. And this was consistent in other areas too. Even there was reports about incursions over military installations or sensitive military sites.
Right, for that 3 week.
It was a November time frame.
Right.
Yeah. For a
Back in
3 week
22 and I
period,
think
yeah.
23.
I think it was a 3 week period too. So well, we're still seeing these objects. This time around, we're still seeing them. I don't think they've died down. And as a matter of fact, my daughter 2 nights ago had observed an object over an area of Long Island called Staten Island, and she was headed into Jersey at the time, and she was able to get one picture of an object that scaled as big as a 747 and stretched vertically up into the night sky. And she said in a flash, she said it went from vertical to horizontal, and it changed its color from orange to all white lights, circular white lights. And she said then it just disappeared.
And she was describing, like she drew a picture.
Yeah.
She's describing a rectangular shaped object with lights on it and 2 appendages that came out of one side of it. And like John was saying, she described it as being vertical, then suddenly it's being horizontal.
Yeah, she called me up. She was quite surprised. She was,
she took a partial photo of it.
Yeah,
it was interesting.
Yeah, it was a little distorted because she was driving at the time and she was trying to get her cell phone out to get that one picture. And she had definitely caught something.
Yeah, you see like maybe a quarter of it. It looked rectangular, and you could see the appendages off it.
Right.
You gotta give her the keys to the Nightcrawler.
Yes.
But yeah, amazing all the stuff that you've seen. When you were out there with Kevin Knuth, was that the same kind of phenomenon, the orb phenomenon that he was witnessing?
Nothing really, nothing major happened that night when he was out. He was out without 2 other scientists. So we were demonstrating our equipment and showing them. But nothing. There was nothing. Nothing showed up.
I think it was just too cold to be out there. Kevin had a respiratory thing going on, and he was out there for a few minutes at a time, and she had to come right back in again. But it was kind of disappointing because they picked the coldest night and the windiest night to be out there.
You have some video links in the book, but it's always hard with video links in a book because, of course, you can click on them.
Yes.
Unfortunately, we had changed that. The first version of the book had the links. We had taken the links out, and we had provided a Google link to look at the various different videos that we have and some of the instrumented data.
Yeah, because if our listeners wanna see something, and I can share it all on my social media, but would be nice to have maybe an overview, and I can provide it to people.
Frederick, if your audience enjoys this appearance and wants to see more of the videos, a part 2 can take place where we could show the actual videos and John and Gerry can narrate, answer questions.
That would be amazing.
Absolutely.
Right.
That would be amazing.
I mean, if you like, I could probably share one of the videos here, a couple of videos with you, if you'd like to do that.
That would be cool.
All right. So I'll let you guys continue talking. I'll just quickly go through our library here, see if I can find it.
Oh, yeah. So while John's trying to find those videos, when we talk about going back to that triangular object that we said was out there about 45 minutes.
The krill.
At the 45-minute mark, I noticed on my camera 2 bright objects on the beach. They were very small. They were extremely bright, but only giving off infrared light. They weren't bioluminescent. It was infrared light. So we went up to them, collected them. They were brightest things on the beach. It's almost like somebody shining a flashlight back at you. But we collected these 2 specimens. It was a krill and a shrimp, only a few millimeters in size each one, but they would look like they were supercharged with IR energy. And they were getting off this IR energy for at least an hour. We recovered them. We brought them back to the Nightcrawler. That night, I did a microscopic examination of them. Both of them had large openings in their thorax. It looked like there was some kind of thermal heating or thermal expansion of the insides of these organisms, and the chest area, the thorax ruptured out, and they both had the same avulsive injuries on their thoraxes. The other things, they were desiccated, they were dead. There was, they looked like they were dried out when I looked at them. So we kept them in the specimen container. A couple days later, I remember going back to the specimen container, and the weird thing is, what we saw in there was like conjugated chalk. It looked like they were dried out, and it was just this powdery, clumped up mess that was left. It looked like the water was removed from it.
It was absolutely bizarre.
Yeah, it was bizarre.
Gerry's background also includes forensic science, and he actually worked for a time with our local county
Medical examiner's office.
medical examiner. So he has the expertise to do that type of a investigation on organic material.
Yeah, you have some amazing backgrounds, and I'll make sure to mention that in the Danish part of this show. Wow, now something is happening to the screen.
Okay, so I just wanted to quickly show some of the equipment. I don't know if let me see if I can step through it.
So this is all eye candy now.
Yes, yes.
For sure.
I'm getting stressed just looking at all those wires. And,
yes. So you'll see on the table here, you'll see one of our hyperspectral cameras. This was a camera system that I designed. It's got UVC. So you can see there's a label up here. I don't know if you can see my mouse pointer.
I can.
But you got your UVC camera, UVA, UVB, UVC. You have a near infrared. You have shortwave infrared. You have long wave infrared, and these cameras, all of these cameras have millimeter wave radar, and the range on this radar is 3 miles.
Make a point to it.
Yes, it's in the front here. So you can see some of the camera's lens systems. You have near infrared up here. You have
the radar.
The radar. You have a little bit of the dome from the radar that you can see. You have SWIR. You have a long wave thermal. You have FLIR camera, and these are all Doppler. The radars are all Doppler effects. So you can hear this transition of motion, and it's equated to a frequency, which is also equated to speed. So if an object, let's say, is coming back at we're giving a frequency of 22,000 cycles, that would equate to 220 miles per hour. So you can hear those changes. You'll see that this is inside the laboratory, the RV. And you'll see that on the wall here, you see some equipment up here. You see down here, you'll see there's a LiDAR. There's a binocular with a spectrometer attachment to it. So you can aim at an object and you can get a complete spectrum of light and to be analyzed on the object itself. On the other side, you'll see that we have computers. There's 5 different computers that is tied to various different instrumentation that's recording all these environmental factors, all these environmental characteristics. And let's see, I don't know if I can I go slide by slide, probably not. Let's see. Let me go back in and okay. So I don't know if you can see this here.
Yes.
This is a piece of software. This is our millimeter wave radar with the Doppler. This is a graph of a Doppler return, and along the bottom it gives you a range in velocity. In this case here, it starts at 10 kilohertz, which is 100 miles per hour, on up to 244, 24. It says 24.4, which equates to the frequency. And you'll see that these transients that you see, these are actually objects in motion at a certain velocity. So we'll pick them up, and then you'll see over on this side, these are lower frequencies that tend to be more biomass. Some of it has to do with
commercial flights out there. Might be Cessnas or a helicopter, which is producing, of course, these transients
and bird flocks,
and that sort of thing, because it's very sensitive to biomass as
Yep.
well as it is to objects. Let me just go back in.
Yeah, and no stress, by the way, because we have a very, very skilled editor who will.
Good.
No,
That's good.
no stress. It's not live on tape like that.
Okay, great.
All right, and then let's see. Let's do this. All right, so we've been, of course, over time we've been redesigning, redeveloping some of the equipment we have. And this is the latest for our Phase 3 initiative. And this is a very sensitive UVC detector. So it'll detect plasmas, that are let's say maybe 3 or 4 millimeters in diameter, at a distance, believe it or not, of over half a mile. So, I mean, very sensitive. And of course, larger objects we can see at a much greater distance. The detectors that are in these sensors are designed to see small fires from an aircraft at 30,000 feet.
Wow.
So they're very, very sensitive. And you'll see on the back, there's digital measurements showing you, the intensity and the average levels of these detections. It'll tone out. It'll let us know if it does detect a plasma at a great distance. And we have had some detections with these objects that they are delivering a UVC wavelength, which is indicative of a plasma or a discharge, an electrical discharge.
And these are not off the shelf, because John's like a wizard,
No.
Gerry,
Yeah,
wizard
I'd imagine.
at elevating all the equipment that they purchase.
Of course.
Right. So, and of course, it's I don't want to spend too much time on the equipment, but let me just grab one of those.
Some of the bigger
That
pods. Right?
orb at the shoreline. I went across the
Let
shoreline.
me see if I can grab that. Just bear with me a second here.
Oh yeah, of course.
Frederik, are you an experiencer?
I am actually not an experiencer, but I was raised to believe what people tell me. So
Was your dad an experiencer?
he had some kind of experience, yes. A lot of his friends were really experienced, but my dad had, 100% belief until the day he died. Unfortunately, he had 10 years ago. Yeah, very much a believer.
Well, you're carrying the ball.
I actually am,
right?
Yeah. I found all of his old magazines, UFO magazines and stuff, when I cleaned up his house. And that's when it really hit me that I knew he was into UFOs. We watched movies together, and of course all the American ones especially. But when I found all that, I found handwritten notes and stuff like that from the 50s and 60s, and he was completely obsessed. So
very interesting.
Apparently, I thought I was nothing like my dad, but then it just comes sneaking up on you, right? And now I have long hair and I'm doing something creative, and I love UFOs, so I am just de facto becoming my dad.
And it's a great time to have an interest in this particular phenomena right now.
It really is. It's a shame he's not here to see it. Yeah, because he died in 2013. No one was talking about UFOs at that point. So yeah, he would have loved this era. I'd imagine. Yeah.
Out of the fringe into the more of the mainstream.
Definitely more of the mainstream. I think sometimes we forget how lucky we are that this is actually something we can discuss and follow in the media to some extent. Are you an experiencer? I mean, I guess with the Tedesco brothers you are, but did you have anything early on? Oh,
I have not a close encounter like John and Gerry, but I have seen strange things all my life. All my life.
Yeah. And Don did see an orb in her room. I went to after.
Yes.
It's one of the we put under the heading of hitchhiker effects.
Right,
Yeah.
right. We've had a couple of those. Okay,
I
so this
think
is
consciousness has something to do with it.
Yes,
What exactly,
yes.
I'm not sure.
Yes, because they showed an awareness of us ever since that August 28th incident. We were seeing them more often, and they always seem to appear in front of us, in front of the lab.
Okay, so I guess you guys can see this. This is one of the.
Yes.
Okay, so this is off the Robert Moses coast, the Robert Moses State Park coast,
and this occurred in November 13th, 2022.
Right. So it
occurred at 12:31 in the morning.
Right, and it's a bluish orb, and you'll see there's actually two of them out there. The one that is moving from right to left of field of view, and then you'll see an object just behind it to the right that seems to submerge under the water as well, and that it's a different.
And if you notice, that object is very low to the water. It's riding the coastline. And it was a large bluish orb.
Right. And what we've noticed over a period of time is that these orbs, basically the direction of travel, the way they're translating, they seem to color shift. They blue shift and red shift. If they move towards you by rotation or in a linear movement, it'll blue shift. As it moves away or rotates away from you, it'll redshift. So there's something unique going on there, and something that we believe is called gravitational lensing. And they give a kaleidoscope appearance when they're rotating. So let me
and you'll notice you'll see some of this chromatic display.
Yeah,
and you'll also notice a rotation as it's moving.
Right. All right. So let me play this video.
There's changing its color,
and you'll see an object just to the right of it.
To the right of it, and the other object to the right of it is sitting on the water. It's actually either disappearing or going under the water,
and it is rotating just like this object. But you can see
Go ahead. Now, as we're panning, you'll see these flashes go on. See those flashes?
Yeah.
We're running a UVC detector. Then it triggered the UVC detector, which indicated them this might have a plasma around it.
Right, right. Yeah, and it's also a way of doing triangulation. But again, let me play it once more.
Yeah,
you'll see the object as it's moving to the left. You can see it's blue.
Yeah,
and the object behind it, which is I don't believe it's moving at that time, but it's rotating and it's shifting, but it's mainly red or orange in this case.
Green as well, or am I?
Yes, there's a little bit of green in it.
Yeah, and the other one blue and a little bit of purple.
Yes.
Purple, yes.
Right, and that's
finding out now that I'm colorblind.
And you'll see there's two other objects out there too.
Yeah. Are they blinking? Are they blinking?
Yes.
Yeah,
they glint. They're actually glinting.
They appear to be glinting. We believe they're polyhedral structures. When the luminosity drops, we can actually see what looks like a polyhedral structure. It's got multi-sided.
Yeah. So now look there. You see that there's one luminous side there.
Yeah.
Now, if I go back and forward, you'll see.
And you're telling me that you could only look at this through the equipment?
Yes.
As well. Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, this one we using a near IR camera, but it was showing some of the visible light.
Yeah. Well, these are color night visions.
Yeah. So that's why you're seeing the color. Yeah.
There's the newest versions of the Cynex have the color mode. Mine was my Pro needed to be updated in order to get the color, but since then we've actually picked up 3 or 4 color night vision cameras in order to be able to see this the visible light as well.
It's very clear. It's does this represent what you is this a normal day at the office?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's one of our better data points.
Yeah, and let me
Weird. That's so weird. What
let's
is
see
it?
if we
What do you guys think?
Okay, so this is another interesting one.
I
Since
could see
Johnson.
why it was so easy to go back out and go back out, no matter what the weather was.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see that.
all right, so let's
Be a little
get
bit
this one on.
addictive.
Yes.
All right. Okay. So the next video you're going to see is an area at Robert Moses State Park. It's called Democrat Point, and it's just to the west, and it's an area of an inlet. And this was at 2:30 in the morning. We could see an object within our field of view. The object was roughly 450 meters from my vantage point from where I was recording it, and it was across the parking field, and you'll see a bunch of cones in there, and the object was on an area of beach that seemed to cast light. It was a rotating starburst. And it was casting light down on the grass and the sand.
I can see it was very loaded with sand, and it was casting off a lot of light, a reflection on the sand.
Right.
But John zooms in on it.
So I zoom out to get perspective, and they just look at the cones, and I'll zoom back in, and you'll see. Let me just pause this a second. So you'll see this starburst. This is a rotating orb, and below it, this is actually the reflection of light on the sand and grass that was out there.
Okay.
And it was I would say it was roughly about 4 or 5 feet from the surface.
Yeah, so it's very low.
Yes.
And yeah, that is so weird.
Isn't that something?
And that same night that John has other videos, at the same time he saw this object, this orb of light spinning, hovering above the sand, there were other orange, reddish, fireball-like orbs that when John tried to zoom in on them, when he got close, when he did zoom in on them, they would just suddenly disappear.
So to the listeners, I'm being shown right now, and I'm gonna share this, but I'm being shown, a small orb lighting so bright that the surface underneath is also being illuminated.
Exactly.
Around of it, it's all around it's pitch black darkness, and nothing is going on at this point.
Right.
Yeah.
And we were able to get, of course, knowing the range, the area that of the beach that this object was spotted over. At 450 meters, we were able to get a size on it with the field of view of the camera, anywhere between 2 and 4 meters in diameter.
But
and I can see. Go ahead, French.
No, I'm just saying that of course, what makes this really special in my opinion is of course your equipment, the fact that you are measuring this as much as almost humanly possible, because often when you get these orbs, they might be something spectacular and they might not. But here we have much more proof that it is really anomalous and weird.
And if you notice, it's throwing off a lot of light, and there's a tremendous amount of light.
It was intense. It was really intense.
Yeah, I can see
and
that.
And then just as the other starburst that I zoomed in, I tried to zoom in and get an image of. As I zoomed in, the objects would suddenly just disappear. And this did the same. It would just disappear.
Maybe
like disappear or go up or go down or just
completely
just flash out.
Yeah, just flash out. Yep. You can play the whole thing maybe again.
Yeah. And this one also only through the equipment, or did you see the bright light?
This one was visible.
This one was visible.
This one was visible. Okay.
This one was visible. Yep.
Yeah.
Because those are the cones in a parking area,
of course,
and then that's on the beach.
Yeah. And I'll show you another video, and you'll see the difference between the visible light. I just pause it for a second, and
And I'm just going to try to get his perspective. If you notice, you'll see that starburst. That's a rotating orb. It's a rotating starburst. Right. So you see these series of cones.
Yeah.
And this is an area of Democrat Point out here, which is 450 meters away. Now, you don't see many visible objects. And what's unique about this is that we had pulled out the night vision cameras, the infrared cameras, and now you're going to see a bunch of objects out there which seem to be rotating, and they take flight, they move to the right, they translate to one direction and the other, and then they just disappear from sight. You know, so it's they're in the infrared, and we believe that's what happened here. Is they would go from the visible spectrum and do something like a signature management and move into the infrared.
Yeah, we noticed that when they're extremely intense, the luminosity is way up, as you can see invisibly. Then they drop the luminosity because it becomes difficult to see. Then it looks like they transition into the infrared spectrum. So it looks like it's some form of signature management.
And I assume that you talked about if this could be anything not anomalous. I mean, what source of light would be out there at this point, just coming and going? I mean, I don't have a good answer. Did you discuss
nothing we're aware of?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's completely anomalous.
Yeah, it is. It really is, and it's very clear.
That would explain why people aren't seeing them all the time, is especially if they could change the spectral signature.
Yeah,
because the human beings have, of course, a limited window of visibility. It's only with that's less than 0.01% of the entire electromagnetic spectrum is the optical range we see.
Can you guys see that video? That image?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is that same area of Robert Moses, Democrat Point. You'll see there's barrels up front here, and then you'll see a series of barrels with reflective tape on it. And this is all through the IR. The barrels here, I'll go from one to the other. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 barrels. Everything else in here is something different. There's no other barrels in there. And we believe that that's either some kind of mimicry or they're sitting behind the barrels. They're almost like birds perching on the shore there. And I'll play it, and you'll see movement.
And what the barrels doing, they're reflecting the light from the RV.
Right.
That's why they're bright. But these other objects are completely invisible. They're only seen in the infrared.
Right. So you'll see an object out here. It takes flight. It starts to move to the right.
And it's hovering above the ground.
And you'll see it glinting. It's actually rotating.
You'll see other ones emerging out of the ground.
You'll see 2 more develop. And there's another one here. Now you got 3. You got 3 up there.
Actually, a triangular shape. Yeah.
Yep. And you'll see a rectangular.
And they suddenly disappear. Yeah.
Then the other one, you see they start to rotate in the infrared. It's all infrared. They can't see it visibly. And you can see what.
You checked all radars and flight radar and stuff like that.
Yes, right.
I mean, we routinely do that.
And flight radar wouldn't have picked these up because they're only literally only about maybe 20, 25 feet from the ground. They're very low. This is an area, a beach area, and there's a fence here, and they just moved just above the fence line.
Yeah, so we're looking at a landscape, and in the distance, we see these orbs coming up and doing a formation, and then
and then they
going away.
Suddenly disappear.
And you'll notice that one is moving to the right.
Yeah,
it's the right field of view. It's heading towards a sign there. It's well behind the sign, but you see it heading.
Yeah,
towards its motion.
And they're roughly about 550 meters away from us at this point.
And you'll see it's passing.
450.
See, it's passing one that's stationary. Just went behind the sign.
And again, you see here's another one that just materialized, and it's rotating.
Are they going the same route?
It looks like it. It looks like the one followed the other.
Yeah.
And I've noticed that one disappeared, the one behind the sign.
And this is just above the fence line. And you can see it just went out.
Huh.
And they would do this. They would pop in and out. They would appear and disappear.
And like I said, if you look back this way, what I realized is that these are not barrels back here. These are those objects, and they're just sitting out there.
Yeah, the barrels are a little more clear.
Yes, yeah,
yeah,
yep, much more reflective.
yeah.
These are more like, I guess they're shaped like orbs.
Yeah,
or they're rectangular. I mean, I thought this might be a behavior, maybe a form of mimicry, right? To look like the background, so you don't, they don't appear obvious.
Yeah, that is something else. And you had so many experts to look at these as well, and still
yes, we brought in at least a dozen scientists that we showed.
Yeah,
a couple of hours we would show them these videos, and of course they were kind of stumped. Right, and of course we've shared our data with the federal authorities. So
what do they how do they comment?
They don't comment too much, but they do appreciate getting the data. They're definitely interested in the data.
Something weirdly funny about some of that kind of people, suits or whatever, and then this mystical phenomenon kind of cross-hairing a little bit sometimes, right?
Yes.
Yeah. You said the word weirdly, but before, Frederik, you said the word weird, and exactly how you say it is how our friend, Swedish astrophysicist Beatrice Roll says that word. And when you said that word, I said, oh my God, all I was thinking was our other friend in the northern part of the world, beautiful Sweden. Beatrice, she pronounces that word just like you. It just flashed right back to Beatrice.
Yeah, we have a distinct way of talking here in Scandinavia.
Nice.
Can you guys see this
yes.
image?
Yes.
Okay.
What a beautiful
All
image.
right. So this is and this has been on other. I believe we put this on other podcasts. Well. Yeah. So this is an object. We call it it's a rotating polyhedron, and we call it the rotating cube with cohesion. It actually have a spelling mistake here. It says cohension, but it says cohesion. And it's a cube that ascends up into a cloud layer, and you'll see another object coming down from the cloud layer, and they seem to merge together, and as one, and they synchronize rotation. But you could see the kaleidoscope of color around the object, which we believe again that there's some kind of a gravitational lensing going on there. And we've written a second paper about it, which is published in a scientific journal. Yeah, it was the Open Journal of Applied Sciences.
Amazing.
All right, so there you go. I don't know if you guys can see that rotation, that glinting.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Clearly.
And also, it has a disco ball look to it. Like if you rotate a disco ball with a light, shining light on it, you'd see it. And you'll see just to the right of it, and on the top of that cloud layer, actually the lower layer of the clouds, you'll see a light starting to protrude through. And this was actually visible because Donna and I were looking at that while you were filming it. And I even looked with a pair of binoculars, and it was nothing recognizable, just this compact object that was looked polyhedral. And if frame by frame, we've actually did an analysis on this video, and you'll see here that the two objects, they merge together.
Yeah. Yeah, we're looking at a beautiful night sky and a cloudy night, and then we see one object go into another, and then they sort of disappear, fade out.
Yes, right. Yes, right. And this was below the cloud layer. What were the height of those clouds, John? The cloud base, we go by cloud base altitude, and the cloud base altitude that night was 2,000 feet. And we also verify it. Most of the time, we try to verify it with a LiDAR. We measure that. The range, the altitude range of the clouds. But these were thin layers, so it wasn't very. We didn't get a good return. But there's another way of doing it, and that's of course through a calculated method, which is measuring the two parameters, the temperature and the dew point. So by having the temperature and the dew point, you can calculate the lower cloud base altitude. So this is a still image of it, and you could see at times. You could see that there's some blue, then it goes red. And again, when we did a frame by frame analysis, you could clearly see that fringing of color. As it's rotating towards you, it's blue, and it rotates away, it's red. So it's giving a kaleidoscope appearance. And that's the kind of thing that, when we ask folks about what they've seen, if they've seen an orb, we say, did you notice whether it was that it was giving a kaleidoscope appearance?
Yeah, color shifting.
A color shift, a chromatic, a display.
Yeah.
Because that's a good indicator that what they're seeing may in fact be one of these orbs, and it's rotating through possibly through a gravitational shift.
We had a pilot, a Danish pilot who flies in Great Britain, and he sent me a few videos, a lot of videos actually, because they kept seeing weird phenomenon where they were flying over Turkey, over England, a few places, and they seemed to be, when you took stills of them, they seemed to be shifting in color, but of course they did not record in advanced technology like you guys. Right. So there could be something with the cell phone recording, but it looked really weird. And of course, all the skeptics said it's probably some kind of satellite. And these pilots, they're like, no, we know how satellite looks like.
Yeah, but that became a common explanation as Starlink satellites.
Yeah. And of course, a lot of people do see satellites and believe that they're something anomalous when they're not. But some people know what they're looking at. Yeah,
exactly.
By now, the pilots have learned what the Starlink looks like at its various stages to be able to decipher. By now,
yes, yeah, definitely. And that seems to be that's pretty much the common theme. Unfortunately, with folks like Mick West, is that he had analyzed. He put this video on his on YouTube, and basically discredited it as far as anything but prosaic. He said it was what he sees was an airliner, and they tried to go tried to disprove it with ADS-B data, and I actually went through it with them. We looked at through the exchange, the ADS-B exchange. We looked at the cloud-based, commercial airliner that he claims that was producing it, and it was at 13,000 feet. The cloud-based altitude, which we measured at 2,000 feet. So if an object was up that high, you wouldn't have seen it above the cloud layer. Number one.
Yeah.
So it's but we went back and forth, and of course,
we'll defend, like says, if someone wants to be as a reasonable skeptic, we'll go over the data.
Yeah.
But Mick West is his agenda is to be a debunker.
When you really, in your heart of hearts, do not have just an ounce of belief in you, it's difficult to
yes, it really is, and it's he just didn't see it, and it seems to be a common theme, so it makes it difficult. It's especially if somebody is just mainly looking at video data, and they ignore their instrumented support, the instrumented data, the radar data, of course cloud-based data. They're ignoring the type of cameras that are being used, and of course the field of view, and there's so many other parameters.
Yeah, and we layer the data. We never go by a single data point. We have to have a set of data points that so it's like a fingerprint. To support the.
You think like scientists. You are scientists. So it's that again, my point from earlier. That's why this is I think extra exciting, because oftentimes you do not know if there could be a prosaic explanation because there's no data to back it up, but you guys clearly have that. So
that was our big goal, is to make sure that this was sensible, it was scientifically sensible, and we followed scientific protocols to make sure the data was accurate.
All right.
Sure.
So the next video that you're seeing here, this was a video that was given to us by a police officer. who had a friend, I guess, her friend was
she was a friend who was a bus driver. Who was a bus driver, and he was going to work. It was like 4 o'clock in the morning. He pulled his bus over, and he saw this object that was hovering over a highway. And there's an area called Middle Island on Long Island. It was over in an area in a road called Middle Country Road. But this object was just hovering.
When was this?
Okay. This was at 4 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, I mean the date. Or just approximately?
Yeah, I believe it. I believe this was an October observation.
Yeah, I got to check the date. I'm not sure.
I think it was October of 2023.
Yeah. Okay.
Let's see now. Okay, so this is what he recorded, and you'll see.
And I should say what he described. I actually spoke to the police officer, and she had got him on the phone, and I spoke to him as well. Had a long, lengthy conversation. He described seeing an object that he said it gave off a kaleidoscope of light. It was rotating. He said it's almost like a Christmas ornament, but it was all the colors of the rainbow. He said as it was rotating.
Right, and you can clearly see it here. You can clearly see that the chromatic display there,
and he describes almost like a disco ball.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, he's using a cell phone, so you see the edges on the telephone pole. They're kind of distorted simply because of the compression, the high compression.
But you can see the rotating, the color just changes.
But obviously,
the color spectrum, the chromatic.
You can see that chromatic display. And this seems to be very unique to these orbs. Is that what we believe to be gravitational lensing? There's no other object that can do that. Unless you're looking at something, a star or something like that it's either has a large mass or there's a large mass that is distorting or producing a gravitational field around it.
And just to be the guy who with the stupid question, this is not a star. We can
no, not at all.
No, not at all. No, this is definitely, and you'll see that there's other objects that are also rotating in the sky there.
It's pretty bizarre.
Yeah. So,
and like I said, this was large to his eyes, and it was so prominent that it caused him to pull over and actually take his cell phone out and record it. He said it was like a Christmas ornament spinning in the sky in place with this chromatic display of color.
Right, and we've analyzed the video. We've magnified it. We've gone frame by frame, and you can clearly see, where one side of the object is almost completely blue, and the other side is red, and depending on the direction of rotation.
And this is consistent with the kind of objects we were seeing out there. So,
right, and we're seeing more and more of these observations. I believe the latest one I saw was in Italy. Where somebody had taken a video of an unusual object, and it was the same kaleidoscope appearance, same thing, based upon what I was able to analyze, had the same shifting of red and blue shifting.
Mm-hmm.
We also we were able to look at a police officer video in Connecticut, which is just north of where we are, and he had recorded an object on a cell phone basically doing the same thing. And of course there was other oddities too, that the object suddenly moved from his point of view over across the lake on the other side in a fraction of a second.
And this object that he reported descended on his patrol car. It lit up the patrol car. Right. And he said it was an orb of light, a reddish orange ball of light, and was also changing color. And this was interesting because this was in Connecticut, which is north of Long Island, and it was right across from an area we were seeing orbs when we went on the North Shore of Long Island.
Yeah,
directly across.
Same general area, directly across. And this was broadcast on News Nation.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I think I know it then. Yeah. I had a guy who also sent me a video. Unfortunately, pretty bad cell phone recording, but he was out rowing in the evening, and this orange ball was, and he was saying the exactly same thing. It was rotating, and it was just above the water, and you saw the same sort of glow on the water as the earlier one that you showed me. And of course, I checked everything. Where was the moon? Where was, and
Yeah, exactly.
clearly something lighting up. And he was so afraid. He was laying in his boat trying to row away from it because he did not know what he was seeing. Yeah, it's weird phenomenon.
Yes, it's startling. It's definitely startling when you see something like that.
Yeah.
But you know what's funny? Some people want to get away from it. We want to go further forward towards.
We have that. Our scientific curiosity is so strong.
We're not scared.
As long as your legs are working, right?
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, that was an experience.
You definitely need your legs.
But guys, it's midnight here, and we could talk all night, but
Sure.
I do need to keep it for the listeners' sake.
Can you
Get some
just
sleep.
tell us
Yeah.
one more thing, Frederik?
Yeah, of course.
Anything that you've seen, notations, you mentioned notations that your dad had included with some of the property that he left. Anything that you came across that could shed any light on this phenomena and the videos that John and Gerry showed from what we saw?
I don't know.
Anything at all?
I mean, the phenomenon definitely moved so much, progressed so much from back then. I mean, all the stuff that you guys are doing was not even at all possible back then. So it does seem a little, naive compared to where we are now. It's more of back then I felt it's more of a belief, more stories, no videos at all. So it's definitely something else. But what I really was startled by was how strong the belief was back then in the 50s and 60s. And I think what really, kind of shifted was all of the movies, all of the Hollywood movies that came out, which were both a good thing, but also kind of made it, for my generations, we grew up watching E.T., watching, Close Encounters.
Yes.
So it's so difficult to wrap our heads around the fact that this could be a real phenomenon, It almost seems like werewolves or,
Right.
some other stuff that we watch in the
true.
movies. So it is, but I definitely see the wheels are turning and people are more and more getting into being more comfortable with the thought that maybe we haven't figured it all out. And I think Anja, which unfortunately you didn't get to meet today, but she is a very open-minded scientist who, and I'm gonna really looking forward to showing her this recording. And she keeps an open door. She doesn't believe that we're even anywhere near having figured things out.
Right.
So
Yeah.
And then we always have to come into contact with the people who try to keep it under wraps. So there's always that factor that's existed since the 40s, right? 50s and even today. And that's
he
something
actually
that
wrote back then. He wrote because JFK was did just become president in one of his notes. That's how old it is. And now
That's
we're
fascinating.
hoping for more transparency. Was his his prayer for the new president. So it's that kind of reminded me of today, right?
And there's an
Yes.
anecdote that JFK told, wanted to act or wanted to learn more about UFOs, and that he even discussed a story or two with Marilyn Monroe.
Yeah.
So there's a conspiracy that is that also why he was assassinated? Is that why Marilyn, was suicided? Who knows what the truth is? But it's fascinating, and I think it's so wonderful, Frederik, that you're carrying on what your dad was so passionate about, and you're passionate about it now too.
Yeah. I mean,
Nice story.
who wouldn't be? I mean, with
Absolutely.
a grain of
That's what we
openness.
think.
Yeah. But I mean, yeah.
I would just say one thing too. It just I would encourage folks out there if they see they see observations with these drones and that sort of thing, and this flap, as long as it lasts, this wave, that I would encourage them to look carefully and look and see if there's a secondary object out there that's not just the drone light, but there's accompanied by an orb. And if it is visible, look to see that kaleidoscope appearance to it, which may give a little bit more of a clue as far as what they're looking at.
What should people do if they see something and they only have a cell phone? Now that I have some experts, what would be the best way? Is it to just film or zoom in or have
Yeah,
a
if they could take
yeah?
If they could take a video clip so we can see the dynamics of it.
Right. And cell phones, like any camera, they're near infrared sensitive. So, even if you don't see it with your eyes, you may see it on the
You
cell
might catch
phone.
it, yeah.
You may catch it on your
And
cell
the
phone.
video gives you a better opportunity to catch it.
And something else that the cell phones have a sophisticated set of sensors in it. There is if you download the physics toolkit or the physics app, there's a lot of applications with magnetometers and light sensors and that sort of thing that they can record this over time. And so if this object is giving off a magnetic field, they can they'll certainly be able to measure that and record it on the 3D sensors that are within the cell phone.
Yeah, I mean they could do some data collection.
Sure.
And a cell phone would allow that.
Right.
With the apps.
So everyone remember to record.
Yes.
The more the merrier. The more data, the better. Yeah.
And use those apps.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Donna, Gerry, and John, this has been a pleasure. If you ever do come to this part of the world, let me know. That would
Likewise.
That'd be great. Same here.
I actually do. I do visit from time to time, and I will definitely let you know. And if you have any spare time, I'll gladly come and shake your hand.
We'll accommodate you.
Certainly.
That would be amazing. Thank you so much, all of you. And
thank you.
And it was nice meeting you.
Nice meeting you.
It's great meeting you.
Be careful out there.
You too.
So lovely.
Have a good night, Fred.
Good night now.
Yeah, you too. Thank you so much.
Good night.
Bye.